They say timing is everything. I should have known mine was off the moment Mark Gentry smiled a little too easily. It was Tuesday morning in Phoenix, barely 8:15, and far too early for that kind of forced warmth. But there it was, stretched across his face like a campaign ad. Polished, but hollow. I'd spent the weekend rehearsing every point. Consistent revenue increases, rising client retention, the logistics integration system I'd built for our North American and Asia-Pacific branches. 7 years of work that transformed a fractured regional process into a streamlined, global KPI standard. Just last quarter, that same system secured us a $60 million logistics contract with Polaris Freight. I wasn't asking for a reward. I was asking for acknowledgement, well-earned and long overdue. Mark had only been in the role of president for a month. Classic outside hire energy, crisp suits, trend-driven jargon, and not a clue how the company actually operated behind the scenes. Still, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Why wouldn't I? Not yet. "Thanks for coming in," he said. "Angela," he added, gesturing to the seat across from him. His corner office was still half empty. No photos, no books, not even a coffee mug. Just a pristine whiteboard, a closed MacBook, and a dying cactus by the window. I got to the point. I told him I wanted to discuss compensation. Specifically, an update to reflect the expanded scope I've been managing for over a year. He nodded. Slowly. Too slowly. "I've reviewed your history," he said. "Your contributions are outstanding, especially with the KPI rollout." Then came the pivot. "But we're currently undergoing structural adjustments. Until we stabilize, all salary discussions are on hold." It's not personal, just bad timing. There it was again. Timing. I held my expression steady. "So, no changes this quarter?" "Not yet," he replied. "We'll revisit after the realignment." He stood up, ending the conversation before I could respond. As I stepped into the hallway, my phone buzzed. Team Sync, updated workflow vision. I paused near the glassboard in the analytics hub. New diagrams, fresh labels, color-coded architecture. The entire structure was mine. But now, my name was nowhere. Every diagram, every metric path, every cross-system reference. Except, my name wasn't anywhere. Logan's was. And that was the moment I realized this had nothing to do with timing. It was the beginning of something else entirely. The calendar invite came in at 6:12 a.m., titled simply Realignment, scheduled for 10:30 a.m. in Mark's office. No agenda, no description, just 15 minutes sandwiched between 2 finance meetings. I stared at it for a long moment. That low pulse of anxiety crept in, the kind you feel in your chest before your mind even understands why. I arrived at 10:28, knocked. Mark didn't look up from his laptop. "Come in," he said, still typing. No handshake, no coffee, not even a glance until he snapped the laptop shut with a faint clap and laced his fingers together. "Angela," he began, his tone suddenly clinical. "Let me get straight to it. As part of the organizational restructuring, we're shifting leadership responsibilities in the systems division." My stomach tightened, but I didn't flinch. "Effective immediately, you'll be reassigned to a senior analyst role. You'll remain on salary with full benefits. However, moving forward, you'll report directly to Logan, who will now lead the global KPI initiative." Logan? The same Logan who 2 weeks ago asked me if recursive mapping was a brand of printer? The one who nearly crashed our internal dashboard with a test script that lacked a closing function? I opened my mouth, then closed it. Mark continued, reading like he was working through a prepared speech. "This isn't about performance. It's a strategic decision. Logan brings a fresh outlook, a new leadership profile more aligned with where we're headed." I nodded slowly, even as my throat tightened. "And my role? Now?" He smiled faintly. "Think of it as mentoring. You'll provide legacy insight, without decision-making authority. Non-decision-making. It felt like I'd been surgically removed from my own system and handed a visitor's badge to the control room. 3 minutes later, the meeting ended. No questions invited, just phrases like, "Thanks for your support," and "We appreciate your professionalism." I walked back through the open plan office like nothing had changed, except everything had. I sat down, opened my inbox, and there it was, a company-wide announcement. Subject: exciting news. Logan Wells appointed as lead strategist. Global KPI initiative. His photo was attached, smiling, overconfident, wearing a suit that looked like it still had creases from the department store rack. My name was nowhere in sight. I stared at the screen, the text blurring behind a wave of disbelief. 7 years. Hundreds of late nights. Every dashboard, every metric tree, every audit-cleared layer of code now repackaged under someone else's name. I wasn't angry. Not yet. What I felt was colder, more precise. This wasn't a realignment. It was erasure. The company-wide meeting began at 9:15 a.m. I took a seat in the middle row of the auditorium, third chair from the left, close enough to be seen, far enough to be forgotten. Mark took center stage, all confidence and polish, holding the mic like a talk show host. Behind him, the screen looped a slick animation. Rising bar graphs, corporate logos, the bold white title, Q2 Strategic Vision, Scaling Smarter. His voice carried across the room. Before we begin, I want to recognize someone who's been instrumental in transforming our KPI systems, now the backbone of our $60 million global expansion. For a moment, my heart paused. Maybe, just maybe, he'd do the right thing. Let's give it up for Logan Wells, our new lead strategist. Applause erupted. Logan stood near the aisle, grinning like he'd just won a game show, adjusted his lapels, walked confidently to the stage. I didn't move. No one even glanced in my direction. If you found strength and hope in this story, I warmly invite you to subscribe and stay with us, because the journey isn't over yet, and the next chapter promises even more unexpected twists and powerful moments you won't want to miss. Mark went on. Logan led the reimagining of our performance logic, optimized metric tracking, and ushered in a bold new data culture. I stared at the screen behind them. The slides were mine. I knew every formula, every color code convention. I built them through trial, feedback, and silent persistence. Then I saw it. The file name in the lower corner of the slide. Angela, KPI archfinal.pptx. They hadn't even bothered to rename the file. I sat perfectly still, hands folded. Around me, whispers buzzed about Logan's fresh thinking. My badge felt heavier than usual, like I was wearing someone else's name. Subject line: "Congratulations, Logan." I opened it. The banner at the top featured a cropped dashboard image, trimmed and rebranded, but unmistakably mine. The layout, the color layering, the metric flow, it all carried my signature, just edited out of context. No one said a word. Or maybe no one cared. I stepped away from my desk, slipped into an empty conference room, and turned off the lights. There were no tears, no anger, just silence. A silence so loud it vibrated behind my ears. The erasure was no longer subtle. It was glowing on screens, announced in bold fonts, and celebrated by people who hadn't written a single line of it. But I didn't shout. I didn't march into Mark's office demanding an explanation. I didn't even reply to the email. I did what people like him never expect. I stayed silent and sharpened. By 7:15 the next morning, I was at my desk with a fresh coffee and a colder mind. My system still lived under the hood. I opened the back-end infrastructure and began tracing the architecture from dashboard to server, line by line. Logan had already started making his mark. Renamed a few things, changed interface icons, slapped new headers on old functions. Cosmetic at best. But the structure, the real system, was untouched. They hadn't gone near the bones, probably because they didn't know how. What they also didn't know? I had embedded microstructures early on. Subtle logic threads that managed memory leaks, calibrated lag thresholds, self-cleaned data redundancies. None of it was documented. I wrote it back when I had no team, no budget, and no one to impress. Just a vision to make the system bulletproof. With headphones in and a blank expression on my face, I blended in. Colleagues passed me like I was furniture. I smiled, nodded. But behind that smile, I was reacquainting myself with every line I'd ever written. And that's when I saw it. Buried deep in the logic layer, the beating heart, the predictive model, the KPI scheduler, the risk simulator. Still running on NutraFrame, a proprietary framework I had licensed privately 3 years ago. License owner, Angela Porter. Status, active. Renewal date, March 2026. I leaned back in my chair. They had built their entire $60 million engine on something I still owned. That framework wasn't owned by the company. It was tied to my name, my credit card, and my signature. They had demoted me, erased me from conversations. But they were still running their entire $60 million operation on a foundation that legally belonged to me. I didn't say a word. Not that day, not the next. No outburst, no confrontation. Just quiet, methodical revisions, shifting pieces, isolating functions, preparing. Because if they thought stripping my title meant stripping my power, they misunderstood everything. They only saw the surface, sleek dashboards and rising charts. But real systems don't live on the surface. They run underneath. By 8:20 the next morning, I was already in the back end. Headphones on, eyes locked in, breath steady. They thought I was moving on. Logan had taken my seat. Mark was onto his next boardroom charm offensive. HR had reduced my legacy to a few bullet points in an internal PDF. Nobody suspected a thing. Perfect. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns too fast. What I felt now was colder, sharper, surgical. I knew every nerve of the architecture, and I knew how to make it sing, while letting the foundation quietly decay. I began with the KPI weighting algorithm. Originally, I'd built it to promote healthy growth, client satisfaction, retention rate, accurate conversion tracking, balanced metrics. But under Logan's leadership, volume was all that mattered. So I leaned into it. On the surface, I rewrote the logic to reward flashy spikes, click surges, API pings, report volume. The numbers? Beautiful, but hollow. Underneath, I stripped the model. 7 strong variables reduced to 4. Then I introduced a slight bias in the demand curve. Subtle, just a 7 to 12% misalignment. Not enough to trigger alarms, but enough to set the stage for quiet chaos. 2 or 3 reporting cycles later. Then came the alert suppression. Our internal system used to catch anomalies before they even happened. It was once our crown jewel. Not anymore. I was about to dim the warning lights, and they wouldn't even notice the smoke. Our alert system used to be the crown jewel. Smart, dynamic, self-correcting. It flagged anomalies before most humans even knew there was a pattern forming. But not anymore. I disabled 3 core early warning layers, quietly, removed their automated triggers, replaced them with soft, review-pending flags that wouldn't go anywhere without manual approval. Now the system would remain calm while it slowly crumbled beneath the surface. Silent, beautiful, dangerous. By 11:40 a.m., I was seated in the quarterly metrics call. Logan stood at the front of the room, pointer in hand, his voice smooth as he walked everyone through the updated dashboard. The screen beamed with color-coded bar graphs, green across the board, uptime, client engagement, sales velocity, forecast confidence. It all looked too perfect. Mark leaned back in his leather chair, arms folded behind his head, wearing the smug smile of someone convinced they'd outsmarted the game. "This," he said, almost laughing, "is exactly the kind of operational excellence we needed." Angela laid the groundwork, but Logan turned it into a performance engine. No one turned to look at me in the back row. No one had to. I wasn't smiling from pride, and I wasn't bitter either. What I felt was colder, sharper, restraint. Let them bask in green lights. Let them convince themselves they'd perfected the machine. I wasn't sabotaging. I was watching, logging every inconsistency, measuring every overconfident claim, tracking every crack they painted over with false precision. Because when it all started to fall apart, and it would, I wouldn't raise my voice. I'd just let the numbers tell the truth. By 9:30 the next morning, the executive conference room was already full. Coffee cups, buzzed conversation, eager eyes on the giant LED screen. The quarterly deck was loaded, animated graphs pulsing with green arrows, rising lines, and shiny momentum. I sat near the far end, still, silent. Logan stood at the front, confident, rehearsed, wearing the same navy blue blazer that hadn't quite settled since he bought it last week. He cleared his throat. "Let's begin with forecast accuracy." He clicked. A banner flashed on screen. 98.6% forecast reliability. The room nodded in approval. Mark smiled like the victory was already his. Mark stood with his arms folded behind his back, beaming like a proud professor showing off his star pupil. The investors smiled, nodding along. I stared at the slide, and I felt my jaw tighten. 98.6% forecast reliability. That number wasn't a mistake. It was a fabrication, an engineered illusion. The stripped-down model, thanks to Logan's optimizations, lacked the variable depth and stability to hit anywhere near 90%. The last simulation I ran, before they pushed me aside, had already shown a projected drift nearing 12%. And that was before Logan flattened the algorithms and deleted half the underlying risk profiles. He didn't understand what he was removing. Or worse, he did, and didn't care. Logan clicked to the next slide. Client delivery timelines have improved by 14%. Stockouts are at an all-time low. We're now 3 months ahead of the market curve. The truth? Deliveries only looked better because the alert system was no longer flagging late shipments, missed batches, delayed transits, mismatched invoices, all of it buried under a now-blind system. And the stockout metric? He'd modified the formula to delay recognition by 2 full cycles. It was like disabling a smoke detector, and then celebrating that nothing ever caught fire. I glanced around the room. Every executive was nodding, approving. Mark leaned in and said, "Logan, these are some of the most impressive metrics I've ever seen." Applause broke out, smiles, eye contact, validation, and I just sat there, still, cold. They were applauding a system I had built and was now quietly dismantling. They praised a machine that no longer functioned as advertised, built on faulty math, sold as brilliance. I said nothing, because the longer they believed the lie, the more powerful the truth would be when it hit. I wasn't going to stop it. I was going to document every flaw. That evening, at 6:40 p.m., I reviewed trend data from the past 5 weeks at home. False spikes, quiet gaps, faked momentum. I saved the file. A notification pinged, LinkedIn message request from Priya Menon, VP, Northbridge Health. My pulse jumped. I opened it. "Hi, Angela. Quick question. Are you still overseeing the KPI system? We've noticed some strange shifts in the data outputs lately. It doesn't feel like your work. Hope you're well." I stared at the message from Priya Menon for a long time. They noticed. Someone noticed. In that still moment, my anger didn't rise. It focused. Sharper. More exact. I didn't respond. Not yet. Because soon, I wouldn't need to say a word. The numbers would speak for me. By 8:50 a.m., I stood near the back window of the operations floor, watching the Phoenix skyline wake up under a haze of sunlight. My inbox was quiet. Slack? Dead. Logan had stopped copying me on anything. Meetings I used to lead now carried on without me. Status reports I used to review now landed directly in Mark's inbox. And still, every data point they applauded came from a system I had personally built. I walked over to Mia, a colleague I'd known for nearly 6 years. Someone I thought still recognized what I'd contributed. "Have you looked at the forecast models lately?" I asked, careful. "They're drifting. I've logged 4 major gaps between projected and actual delivery timelines." She looked up from her screen, blinking slowly. "I mean, maybe. But that's not really your lane anymore, right?" The words landed harder than I expected. "I'm not trying to interfere," I said quietly. "I just think someone should be watching." She gave a kind smile, almost apologetic. "Angela, we know how much you care. Everyone knows you built this place. But things are moving forward. It might be time to stop holding on. That's what she meant. I stood there a second too long, then forced a nod and a polite smile. Right, of course. By 10:20 a.m., I was back at my desk. The office felt both full and hollow. Conversations swirled around me, but none included me. People passed without glancing. I had become background, something left behind. Then an email arrived. Subject: urgent. Order delay, Northbridge Health. I opened the email. A major shipment had failed to arrive. According to the internal system, everything had cleared, processed, packaged, and shipped. But Northbridge Health's confirmation said otherwise. Incomplete batches, outdated inventory, missing documentation. The fulfillment team hadn't flagged a thing. Because no alerts had triggered. Because I had turned them off. I read the message again. Slowly. Northbridge wasn't just another account. They were a legacy client. High value, high volume, consistently loyal. For years. Until now. By 2:45 p.m., word had already started to spread. Northbridge was pulling out of their upcoming renewal. Nearly $8 million, gone. Logan called it a logistics hiccup. Mark brushed it off as client overreaction. But I knew better. This wasn't noise. It was the first fracture. The beginning of a much deeper unraveling. And no one wanted to admit it. Later that afternoon, a new name popped up on the department calendar. Ken Albright, systems consultant. The IT group chat confirmed it. An external hire, brought in discreetly to optimize back-end performance. Translation: Mark had finally sensed the cracks, but he was too proud to call the one who laid the foundation. I watched as Ken arrived. Salt and pepper hair, tailored blazer, expensive laptop. Calm confidence. The kind consultants wear like armor. By 4:50 p.m., he was hunched over Logan's monitor, scrolling through code. From a few desks away, I listened. I'm trying to trace the predictive module, Ken muttered. But where's the top-level logic call? This framework's filled with hidden dependencies I can't trace. It's legacy, Logan said. She made it complicated on purpose. Ken raised an eyebrow. Or maybe just advanced. Logan didn't respond. Neither did I, because I wasn't part of their solution anymore, or their blame. I was outside the circle now, watching the foundation shift beneath their feet, and for the first time, I didn't try to stop it. By 7:15 the next morning, I was alone in the office, exactly as planned. No lights, no noise, only the glow of my monitor, and the steady rhythm of keys. I wore silence like armor now, unshakable. The board meeting was set for 8:30 a.m., and they were about to see the truth, one slide at a time. It was the same polished, misleading set of metrics Logan had spent the past week embellishing. I'd already seen the deck, a symphony of green graphs, sugar-coated KPIs, milestone achievements, built on a system that no longer reflected reality. But this time, the script wouldn't matter, because the data was about to speak for itself. I opened the custom script I'd embedded weeks ago, hidden deep beneath redundant log files. Its trigger? A specific configuration loaded into the boardroom dashboard. No one else knew it existed. Not the IT team, not Logan, certainly not Mark. The message wasn't flashy. It didn't scream. Just 6 quiet lines, surgical, precise, undeniable. I clicked. Run, 8:36 a.m. It went live. The board presentation began as expected. Logan clicked through his intro, smiling with rehearsed confidence, wearing the same navy blazer he wore to every major meeting. Mark nodded along, leaning in with exaggerated interest. Then came slide 3. The room paused. At the bottom of the forecast model chart, barely noticeable at first, appeared a line of text in muted gray. The numbers are optimized. Not real. Ask who changed the core. A cough broke the silence. Logan stared at the screen, blinking hard. Mark leaned forward, squinting. Laptops opened, fingers hovered. A woman in a cream-colored suit, clearly a board member, spoke first. Is this part of the presentation? Logan's voice cracked. It must be a formatting error. We'll move past. Hold on, another voice said, firmer this time. A senior director, someone I'd only known by name, Martin Cross. Who inserted that message? Logan flipped backward through the deck, searching desperately for a clean version. But the line was hard-coded. No version could escape it. It was embedded not just on the live slides, but in the auto-generated executive reports every board member had just received in their inbox. And then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Martin opened his inbox. The automated reporting system had already distributed the raw output to every board member. There, at the bottom of each email, was the same hidden message. He hit reply all. Who the hell is Angela? And why isn't she in the room? The atmosphere shifted. At 8:42 a.m., I received a ping from the compliance officer. Subject, urgent. Are you available for a briefing today? System architecture integrity. I didn't reply. Not yet. I leaned back in my chair, heart steady. But every nerve felt stretched tight, like piano wire. It wasn't fear. It wasn't excitement. It was focus. The system hadn't crashed. It hadn't exploded. It had whispered, just loud enough to unsettle the people who mattered. For weeks, I had been erased, but this morning, I was everywhere, without uttering a single word. By 10:30 a.m., I was summoned to the executive boardroom on the 11th floor, a room I hadn't stepped into for months. The email was formal, urgent, unmistakably cautious. We'd appreciate your insights on current system discrepancies, particularly regarding predictive model integrity. I walked in calmly, like someone returning to a place she already knew by heart. Logan was already seated, pale, rigid. Mark paced near the projector screen, face tight with a forced, brittle smile. Around the long table sat the board members, compliance officers, and, unexpectedly, a client representative from Northbridge Health. I took the empty seat at the far end of the table. No greetings, no small talk, just silence. Martin Cross, the senior board director who'd sent the now infamous "Who the hell is Angela?" email, leaned forward. Ms. Porter, we'd like to understand your involvement with the current system architecture. I opened my laptop, connected it to the screen, and began. No emotion, no triumph, just facts. The predictive engine is producing inaccurate outputs due to altered weight configurations. The number of variables used in forecast modeling was reduced without any adaptive compensation. This causes a margin drift that compounds with every cycle. I flipped to a chart, data overlays comparing the original model with the current altered version. The differences were impossible to ignore. I continued. The early warning alert system has been disabled on 3 critical tiers. Heads turned toward Logan, who said nothing. I pulled up the commit history. Here's the record of every system change, who made them, and when. The code signatures, all traced back to Logan's credentials. Silence filled the room. Then the Northbridge Health representative stood. I'll keep this brief. We've worked with Angela for 5 years. Our operational success was built on her system. When quality dropped, we knew something was wrong. Now, we understand why. He looked around at the board, eyes steady. As of this morning, we've approved transferring our entire systems operations budget to a consulting agreement under Angela's name. She is the system. And frankly, we trust her more than we trust whatever this company has become. The room froze. Mark blinked like he hadn't heard correctly. Logan opened his mouth, then closed it again. I didn't smile. I didn't flinch. I gathered my laptop, stood, and said, I'll forward the documentation to compliance. Everything else is already in the logs. Then I walked out, leaving a silence louder than any speech I could have made, because sometimes the most satisfying victory isn't a speech. It's letting the truth speak for itself. By 8:20 a.m., I packed the last of my things into a small gray tote. No ceremony, no goodbyes, just quiet hands, folding a jacket and unplugging a charger. My nameplate was gone from the desk. No one had bothered to replace it. I didn't mind. The elevator ride down from the 11th floor felt slower than usual. Or maybe I just noticed it more. For the first time in months, I wasn't in a rush. The silence no longer pressed against me. It held me like calm water. As I crossed the lobby, a familiar voice broke through the background noise. "You're not even going to say goodbye?" I turned. It was Sarah from finance. She smiled awkwardly, like someone seeing a ghost. She walked beside me toward the lobby doors, eyes scanning the space as if to make sure no one else was listening. "You don't need to explain anything," she said softly. "Just, for what it's worth, everyone saw what happened. Maybe not out loud, but we saw it." I didn't answer, just nodded as I pushed open the glass doors. Another voice came from behind me. "Ko kom kontratu, hitong naite koroi." It was Henry, a junior developer, one of the few who still ran reports the old way. He didn't wait for a reaction, just slipped past me and disappeared into the revolving doors. I stepped outside. The spring air was crisp, fresh in a way I hadn't felt in months. I pulled out my phone and tapped open the email I'd starred the night before. Subject: offer confirmation. Principal Systems Architect Northbridge had doubled my old salary. Full technical autonomy. No Mark, no Logan. Just clean code, honest work, and a team that respected the architecture enough to let it breathe. As I scrolled, another email caught my eye. An old one, still sitting in the archive. Subject: realignment of roles. I smiled. For a long time, I thought that meeting had ended me. Now, I saw it for what it really was. Not a demotion, a redirection. I didn't lose. I just realigned. Higher. And this time, on my own terms. If this story resonated with you, I invite you to support me by sharing your thoughts in the comments below. Your encouragement means the world. And hearing your experiences reminds me, and everyone watching, that we're not alone in facing workplace challenges. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or erased, please let me know. Your story could inspire others who are struggling silently right now. Remember, life doesn't always unfold the way we expect. Sometimes being pushed aside feels like the end of the road, but it can also be a quiet invitation to realign your path on your own terms. My experience taught me that strength isn't always loud or confrontational. It can be calm, calculated, and full of patience. If you're going through tough times at work or anywhere else in life, don't lose sight of your value. Keep sharpening your skills, stay true to your principles, and trust that the truth will eventually surface. Most importantly, don't let anyone else define your worth. You have more power than you realize, especially when you hold your integrity close and your focus sharp. Life will test you, but it will also give you chances to rise, sometimes in ways you never imagined. So, stay resilient, be strategic, and when the time is right, let your quiet strength speak louder than any words. If you want to hear more stories about workplace justice, resilience, and transformation, please hit the subscribe button and join this community. Together, we can support each other and turn pain into power. Your journey matters, and your voice can help create change. Thank you for being here.